want to go now to the independent MP in the Western Sydney electorate of Fairfield, Dai Lee. Good to talk to you, Dai. The reason I wanted to talk to you, I organised this morning to catch up with you, is because it seemed to me that there's a fair chance these Islamic State families could be settling in an electorate like yours. And you just heard there that the State Premier Chris Minns is preparing the state government to provide housing, social services, education. How do you feel about the arrival of these 34 people?
Well, I'm slightly shocked because I've asked the government twice in the last 18 months. I think the most recent one was in November, to give me the guarantee that they won't be resettled back anywhere within Fowler or within close proximity to Fowler, because the reason being is that my community in particular, Australians of Assyrian, Chaldean, Mandaean and Hasidi's heritage fled ISIS, the ISIS atrocities. And so they have, made Fowler, Fairfield their home and rebuilding themselves. So it's I think the news and hearing what the Premier Minns have said today, that a third of them will be resettled here in New South Wales, that is a huge concern. The government has not indicated to me when I put the question in Parliament, will they be resettled anywhere here in South West and Western Sydney, in particular in my electorate. So we don't know where they will be resettled, but that is a big issue that it's going to be in New South Wales, and the government just have to be take that into serious consideration. Of course, we need to understand that we need to take, terrorism, the fear of the likes of ISIS affiliated members coming back here is, quite scary.
Yeah, correction there. Of course, I did call your electorate Fairfield. It is Fowler. And now you have a very multi-ethnic community, as you referred to. It's very easy for people to talk about these sorts of issues in the abstract, but you have a community that might be dealing with these people returning. There will be fear. There could be resentment. What do you expect to hear from your own constituents, and what do you think their biggest worries would be?
Look, they have raised this with me a couple of years ago, and I have brought this to the Prime Minister and the Minister for Home Affairs, Tony Burke, emphasising that these families have lost homes, have lost loved ones, and they have lived through that ISIS, what ISIS tried to do to their families back in Iraq. So they speak from lived experience, and they have raised the concern that it's very hard for people to understand how fears can be triggered, and because they have lived through it, they know what these the ISIS people can be, capable of. So it's something that I probably, I'm sure hopefully our government understand that seriousness, and so for me, I've got to try to ensure that my community is protected, and that they are safe, and that the government has to do everything in its power to ensure that what these communities have lived through they don't have to relive here in Australia.
OK, we know that some people have returned, both adults and children, from ISIS or the caliphate as once existed across Syria and Iraq. Are we to assume then that they have reintegrated into Australian society without any trouble? There's secrecy around this, but we haven't heard of any problems.
Look, you know what, I hope that they are monitored, and would like to, get that reassurance that it's monitored constantly, and that they also have to face the consequences of, going back and joining ISIS and supporting that horrific regime over there. So my hope, we place, if I can say, trust in the government, in the security, in the bodies, the intelligence bodies to protect and to keep our communities safe. And my hope that the government that Anthony Albanese leads will do that for our community here in Fowler in Western Sydney.
The Prime Minister seems to be telling everybody that the way to have social cohesion is just to say that everybody's tolerant and everything is lovely. I don't think I've seen the social division that we've seen in this country before in my time, the hatred expressed against Israelis and Jewish Australians, and the tension and indeed horrible violence that's caused. What's your assessment of social cohesion in the country at the moment and the federal government's impact on it?
I arrived here as a refugee, as you know, Chris, it was very hard in the first few years of settling in Australia after the White Australia policy. But I know that the large majority of Australians are real fair dinkum Aussies, and they love, you know, to embrace, support people like myself to resettle, as long as we also give back and be part and embrace the Australian. Culture and learn the language and be part of the wider Australian society. And I live in one of the most multicultural electorate in the country. We breathe it every day, diverse, multi-faith, multicultural, speaking 170 plus languages here in our community. I invite you to come out here, Chris, and see that I really make a plea to my community, and I have to say I'm very proud of my community, despite what we hear, the noise that's happening outside of the Fowler, the southwestern Sydney borders. We are living side by side because mums and dads are just going to work to put food on the table, to try and make ends meet, to pay their rents or to pay their mortgages or to run their small businesses. So there are so many of those hard-working migrants like myself or refugees like myself who have come to call Australia home and is proud Australian. And so I think that, and I, like you, I have not seen such unrest and such division, having lived and grown up here for so long. It is a concern. Is it the leadership of our country? And I think that perhaps in the since last term to now, I've seen an increase in anger in people. Probably a lot of that got to do with the economic condition. People are struggling and the government isn't doing anything to alleviate their cost of living, and people are living, hands to mouth. So I think that the government has a lot to do with it, of creating a condition for people to thrive, to live harmoniously. So it is up to Anthony Albanese, the Prime Minister, and his leadership team to bring our community together. And yes, I think they have failed to do that.
Dai Lee, that's all the time we've got. Thanks so much for joining us. I have been to your neighbourhood many times, a fantastic neck of the woods. Next time I'll knock on your electorate office door. Dai Lee there joining us, the member for Fowler in the western suburbs of Sydney. People there who have suffered at the hands of ISIS, worried about Islamic State families coming back into the country, quite understandably.